The theme for this talk is indicated once again by the title on the outline, Discipled by God. So this is a talk on discipling, but it's more for those being discipled than for those who are doing the discipling. I have put the words by God in because I think it's very important that we don't leave God out of the process of discipling. True discipling always proceeds from God. Isaiah 54 and verse 13 states this, and it's addressed to, I believe, the church, God's people. All your children shall be taught by the Lord, and great shall be the peace of your children. That, I think, is a basis for my title, Discipled by God. All your children, without exception, shall be taught by the Lord, and great shall be the peace of your children. I want to suggest to you that the process of being discipled should give you great peace. And if it isn't producing peace in you, you probably need to question whether you're in the will of God or whether you're being discipled by God. Probably before we go any further, I need to just repeat that definition which is there. What is discipling? Discipling, as I understand it, is training and equipping a person for God's service. As I understand the people I have in front of me, in some way or another, nearly all of you are here to be disciples. So this concerns you in a very practical way. Notice I did not say teaching, but I said training. There's a difference. Teaching is imparting knowledge or instruction. Training is going further. It's making people do what you've taught. See, in a school, teachers teach children, we hope, but at home, parents do what? Train them, we hope. Most parents today are falling down on that job. But it's a parent's job not merely to tell a child what to do, that's easy enough. Like comb your hair before you come to the meal table. But it's a parent's job to make sure the child does it. That is not so easy. Not only is discipling training, but it's equipping a person. A person who has been properly discipled not merely should know how to do the job, but should have the equipment with which to do it. If you study the ministry of Jesus, you'll see that he very specifically equipped his disciples. Before he sent out the first 12 disciples, not merely had he trained them, but he equipped them. He gave them power and authority to cast out evil spirits and to heal all kinds of sickness and all kinds of disease. That was their equipment. To have sent them out only trained but not equipped would have not succeeded, see? That's why in our previous talk we dealt with some of the equipment, which was what? What's the word for the equipment? Charismata. That's right. You're all becoming scholars of Greek. I see that. Now, I want to point out that there's a lot of discipling going on in the world, not all of it in the church, but some of it in the church, which is merely on a human level. It's merely humans teaching others what they know. And I want to say that that does not produce the results that the church needs. We have to be very clear, even if we're taught by human beings, that it proceeds from God. And the result of that teaching should always be to build us in our personal relationship with God. If teaching is merely on the human level, it will produce one or other of two things. If it's in the church, it will produce a sect. And if it's out of the church, it will produce a cult. And we have to acknowledge that the world today is full of sects and cults. The reason being that God has not been involved in the process of producing those people. This has originated only on the human level. If you turn to Acts chapter 20, verses 29 and following, you find some words that Paul spoke to the elders of the church at Ephesus, which was a church that had grown out of his ministry. He was speaking to men whom he loved, men whom he had raised up, men who held positions of responsibility in the church. But he gave them a very solemn warning. He said, "For I know this, that after my departure, savage wolves will come in among you, not sparing the flock." You know, of course, the wolf is the enemy of the sheep. "And also from among yourselves," that's from among the elders, "men will rise up speaking perverse or distorted things to draw away the disciples after themselves." There I think you have both types. The people who come in from outside are the people who produce cults. The people who rise up from in the church and within its leadership are the people who produce sects. Sects are groups of Christians that have somehow cut themselves off from the whole body of Christ and become something on their own. The word sect is taken from the Latin word for to cut. It means something cut off. The word cult, interestingly enough, is taken from the Latin word cultus, which means a system of worship. And that gives us the word culture, which is interesting because it tells us that culture is the product of a system of worship. And we are full today in the world of strange cultures, which are cults, which have proceeded from people who were not inspired and directed by God. So, I want to say this most emphatically, and I say it on the basis of personal experience. You need to be very sure that in being discipled, the ultimate source of your discipling is higher than the human level. And I believe the mark will be peace. All your children should be taught by the Lord. Great will be the peace of your children. All right, now, if you want to be taught by God, you've got to fulfill His requirements. Like when you enrolled in the present school that you're in, if I know anything about it, and I think I've filled up some of these forms for people, you had to fill up a form saying who you were, where you came from, what were your qualifications. You probably had to have a recommendation from some minister or pastor. That was the qualifications for being enrolled in this school. Now, I want to tell you very gently and lovingly that you can be enrolled in this school, but not enrolled in God's school. Because God is choosy about His students. Not everybody who's enrolled in a Bible college is a student of God. Not everybody who attends a seminary is a student of God. In fact, my observation is very few of them are. So what does God look for? The answer is primarily character, before anything else. And I'm suggesting to you three aspects of character which are basic. Number one, commitment to obedience. I don't believe God disciples the uncommitted. As long as you're merely experimenting or paddling in the water, I don't believe you'll get much from God. There was a young lady who asked me to fill in a form for her to attend one of these schools that you're in. Because she knew me, I'd had some relationship with her. I filled it in, but she's never come. She still hasn't made it. And I'm inclined to think her problem is lack of commitment. Only the committed qualify for God. Let's look at two scriptures in John. John chapter 7. Verse 17. Jesus says, "If anyone wants to do His will, he shall know concerning the doctrine, whether it is from God or whether I speak on my own authority. What's the key word? If anybody wants to do His will, I would prefer to use the word wills to do His will. He shall know. God teaches those who are committed to do His will. He does not teach the uncommitted. That's why multitudes of Christians attend church for years and never really learn anything, because they're not committed. John 13, verse 17, Jesus said to His disciples, "If you know these things, happy are you if you do them." Listen, friends, it's not what you know that makes you happy. In fact, it can make you very unhappy. It's only what you know and do that makes you happy. It's doing it that makes the happiness. I heard a story about a little girl in a family that was invited to family devotion. She said, "I'm not coming." So they said, "Why?" And she said, "I already know more than I do." That was very wise. You don't learn more than you do. If you know, you're happy if you do. It's doing that matters. That proceeds out of commitment. And the second requirement is humility and the fear of the Lord. Psalm 25, just a few verses. Verses 8 and 9. "Good and upright is the Lord. Therefore He teaches sinners in the way." We need to remember that it's God's grace that He'll teach us at all. Because we start as very unpromising material. We're sinners. Our lives have been warped and corrupted by sin. Why should God bother with us? Because He's good and upright. But we need to bear in mind it's His grace all the way through. The humble He guides in justice, and the humble He teaches His way. An alternative translation is meek. So God teaches the humble. And I really think He doesn't teach any other people. At least if He teaches them, it's in a very different kind of way. He gives them severe lessons. Some people have to learn things the hard way. They're the people who won't learn out of humility. And then in verse 12, "Who is the man that fears the Lord? Him shall He teach in the way He chooses." Fear of the Lord. It's basic. If you've never studied it, I recommend you to study the fear of the Lord. It's a fascinating study. You get a concordance and read through it. Most of the passages about it are in Proverbs. I don't think there's anything that carries with it greater promises of blessing than the fear of the Lord. The book of Proverbs says about it just one example. "He that hath it shall abide satisfied and shall not be visited with evil." Think about that. Be always satisfied and never visited with evil. What's the qualification? The fear of the Lord. It's a rich subject. That doesn't mean slavish fear. It means awe, reverence. I think about it like this. I'm on top of a beautiful mountain. Gorgeous, something like some of the mountains in Hawaii. On one side there is a steep cliff, and at the bottom there is the ocean. And somebody has put kindly a railing to keep you from falling over. So you can stand up on this cliff and you can view the gorgeous scenery all around you and be lost in delight and excitement. Then you turn around to the cliff. And you look there, and you lean over just a little, holding onto the rail. But you know if you leant much further, you'd end up at the bottom. And something tightens in your stomach. For a moment you have this sense of fear. That to me is like the fear of the Lord. He takes you up into this beautiful, beautiful mountain. He shows you everything. It's all for you to possess and enjoy. But remember, there is a cliff. God has put a guardrail there. But if you are presumptuous and lean out too far, you'll end in disaster. And then the third requirement I see is endurance and patience. Now, we need a little verbal study here, because if you're reading the King James, which I love, in the King James, the word for patience is long-suffering. And in the King James, patience means endurance, you see? But in the modern translations, patience means what we call patience today, and endurance means what we call endurance. Now, they're not the same. Endurance is active, patience is passive. It says in Hebrews 12:1, run with endurance or perseverance the race set before you. That's active. Patience is much harder. It's waiting. It's standing back. It's letting things happen. It's leaving God to take the initiative. You find most of the great servants of God had real tests of patience. Think of Moses, 40 years in the backside of the desert, looking after some sheep. Abraham promised a son, waited 25 years till he was 100 years old. David, anointed for the kingdom, spent the next 10 or dozen years like a fugitive, running from the existing king. And in our lives too, brothers and sisters, there are certain things that only come to the patient. If you're impatient, you preempt God. You take the initiative out of his hand. Let's just read about Abraham in Hebrews chapter 6. Verses 11 and 12. Now I'm reading from the New King James, which is adjusted long-suffering to patience. And we desire that each one of you show the same diligence to the full assurance of hope until the end. That means endurance and patience until the end. That you do not become sluggish, but imitate those who through faith and patience inherit the promises. Some people tell you all you need is faith. That's not true. You need faith and patience. And then about Abraham in verse 15 of the same chapter. So after he had patiently endured, he obtained the promise. 25 years later. Now, there's hardly one of us here that at some time or other in God's dealings with us, he will not demand that we exercise patience. And it's part of the condition for being discipled by God. You see, a teacher sets the schedule, not the pupil. You don't decide as God's pupil when he'll teach you what. He decides the when and the what. And all the time he's not merely imparting information, he's shaping your character. All right, now, one other important truth. The path to leading is serving. This is very succinctly stated by Jesus in Matthew chapter 20, 26 through 28. This arose out of a quarrel amongst his disciples as to which of them was going to be chief in the kingdom. Jesus didn't reprove them, he just instructed them. He said, verse 25, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who are great exercise authority over them. That's the world's picture of authority. I spent 5 years training African teachers for African schools in Kenya. And I found out that the African teacher's picture of authority was carrying a big stick and shouting. And the classrooms were so built that there was no complete dividing wall between that and the next classroom. So you'd have one teacher shouting in one classroom and another shouting in the other. They almost drowned one another out. I had to deal with them and say, listen, authority has got nothing to do with carrying a big stick or shouting. In fact, if you need to carry a big stick and shout, you don't have authority. It's totally different. The key to having authority is being under authority. If you're under authority, you have authority. So this is what Jesus told them. It shall not be so among you. You will not think and act like the world does. And this is one of the big problems of the church. So much authority and leadership in the church is on a worldly pattern. It shall not be so among you. But whoever desires to become great among you, let him become your servant. And whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave. Notice, if you want to be great, you've got to become a servant. But if you want to become first, you've got to become a slave. In other words, the higher up you want to go, the lower down you have to start. That's the way to promotion. I have a series of tapes which I call The Way Up is Down. He that humbles himself shall be what? Exalted. It's sure. It's guaranteed. That principle works throughout the universe.